So let's jump right into one of the biggest, most fundamental questions there is. What does it actually mean for something to be alive? It seems pretty simple on the surface, right? We think we know life when we see it. But as we're about to find out, this whole mystery is way deeper and honestly, a lot more fascinating than you might think. Our whole investigation really kicks off with this moment of pure childhood curiosity. You've got a couple of kids who find a snail shell, and they're told, hey, don't touch that, because a living snail might be inside. And this sparked a really brilliant question. How could something that looks totally still, like a tiny rock, actually be home to a living, breathing creature? And that's really the core question for us today. When you look out at the world, where exactly do you draw that line? Where does the non-living end and the living begin? This is the mystery we're going to try to solve together. Okay, section 1. A shell of a question. This whole puzzle about the snail shell, it seems small, but it points to a much bigger idea. That line between living and not living, it isn't always some sharp, obvious boundary. Sometimes life is hiding in plain sight. So, section 2 is the movement test. Where do we even start with this? Well, let's begin with the most obvious clue. If something is moving around on its own, it has to be alive, right? We can call this the movement test. But, how reliable is it really? And right away, our simple test gets a little complicated. I mean, look at a pigeon. It flies, it walks, it breathes. We all agree a pigeon is alive. But then you have a car. A car definitely moves down the road, but nobody would ever say a car is alive. It doesn't breathe, it doesn't grow. So the big point here is that movement, all by itself, is just not a reliable sign of life. Which, of course, leads us to the other side of the coin. If things that move aren't always alive, what about things that are alive but don't seem to move at all? I'm talking, of course, about plants. They're just sitting there, rooted to the spot, but we all know they're living things. But wait, here's a cool twist. It turns out some plants do move, just in these really subtle and incredible ways. Take the Drosera plant. It's an insect eater. When some unlucky bug lands on its leaves, these sticky little hairs slowly curl inwards to trap it for a meal. It's slow for sure, but that is definitely movement, a clear sign of life in action. And here's an even faster example, the touch-me-not plant. If you just gently brush against its leaves, they snap shut, folding up almost instantly. It's this clear, rapid movement. This just goes to show that our definition of life has to be way broader than just being able to walk or fly around. Okay, on to section 3, the 7 signs of life. So to really solve this mystery properly, we need to go beyond just one clue like movement. What we really need is a detective's checklist, a set of rules that all living things follow. And luckily for us, scientists have already made one. And here it is, the official checklist for life. There are 7 key signs. All living things show movement of some kind. They grow, they need nutrition, they respire, they excrete waste, they respond to their environment, and they reproduce. If something can tick all 7 of these boxes, then scientists will classify it as alive. Let's just take growth for a second. This one's pretty obvious, right? A child grows from a baby into a kid. You can't wear the same shoes you wore 2 years ago. A car, on the other hand, is going to stay the exact same size forever. It just doesn't grow. Then you've got all these internal processes that are constantly running to keep life going. Living things need nutrition, that's food, to get energy. They perform respiration, which is basically breathing in some form to unlock that energy from the food. And then they have to get rid of all the leftover waste, and that's called excretion. It's kind of like a factory, you know? You put fuel in, you burn it for power, and you have to take out the trash. All living things also respond to what's happening around them. The technical word for something that makes you react is a stimulus. So if you touch a hot pan by accident, you pull your hand away instantly. That heat is the stimulus, and pulling your hand back is the response. Even that touch-me-not plant folding its leaves, that's a response to the stimulus of touch. All right, on to section 4, the case of the seed. So now we have our trusty 7-point checklist. We should be able to identify anything now, no problem. Well, let's put our list to the ultimate test with our final and probably most challenging case, the humble seed. Seriously, think about a dry bean seed. Does it move? Nope. Does it eat or breathe? Not that you can see. It doesn't look like it's doing anything on our checklist. Just by looking at it, it seems as non-living as a little pebble. So, did our checklist just fail? Well, when simple observation lets us down, we turn to the scientific method. To really find out the truth about this seed, we can run a simple experiment to see if maybe, just maybe, the right conditions can coax those signs of life out into the open. So here's how the experiment works. We test a bunch of different conditions. We take 4 pots, and each one has a bean seed in it. Pot A gets sunlight but 0 water. Pot B gets sunlight and way too much water. Pot C gets just the right amount of water, but we keep it in the dark. And finally, Pot D gets the best of both worlds, sun and the perfect amount of water. So what do you think is going to happen? And the results are in. The seeds that got no water, nothing happened. The seeds that were basically drowned in too much water also failed, probably because they couldn't get enough air. But look at pots C and D. With the right amount of water, these seeds germinated and started to grow. And here's the really wild part. Sunlight wasn't even needed to get the whole process started. Now for our 5th and final section, life is potential. This little experiment gives us the last, most critical clue we need to solve the mystery of life once and for all. It's about to change how we think about our entire checklist. So the answer is a definite, resounding yes. The seed is alive. Sure, it wasn't showing any of the 7 signs when it was all dry and dormant, but the second it got the right conditions, a little water and air, boom, it started to grow. It had the potential for life locked inside of it the entire time. And that right there is the biggest takeaway from our whole investigation. Being alive isn't always about what you are actively doing in the moment. It's not just about moving or eating. Sometimes being alive is about what you could do. It's about having the complete instruction manual for life inside you, just waiting for the right moment to get started. So the next time you see a dormant seed, or a snail tucked away in its shell, or even a tree in the middle of winter, just remember what we talked about. Life isn't always about action. Sometimes it's just about potential. It makes you wonder, what else in the world around you is just waiting for its moment to spring into life? Thanks for joining me on this one.